especially when we're in this virtual mode for sure.
Right. And I was like, because I was telling people like, oh, I'm thinking about cutting it down. They're like, you can't do that. Yay. All right. So we're going live there.
Perfect.
All right. So I'm going to broadcast since it's 7:59, and that way people can start joining us. And I'll do the same thing like I did last time. I'll do your introduction and then we'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Feels very much like deja vu.
Yeah, it does. And I always like to do a shout out to all of our attendees who are joining us tonight. Let's see here. So we asked them if they just put in their in the chat where they're from. Welcome to tonight's Kiwanis Let's Talk with Sarah Moreland Byrne. The numbers are quickly coming in here, Sarah. I see some new names. Our friends Canada, Michigan, Georgia, Japan, California, Nevada, Hawaii, Pacific Northwest, Southwest, Australia. Yeah, see?
From all over.
From all over. So the chat's filling in. So what we'll do is we'll ask people to put their questions in chat later. That way you can take them at the end.
Sounds great.
So we got Seattle, Michigan, California, Nevada, Hawaii, Manitoba, Canada, Southwest, Michigan, California, Nevada, Hawaii twice, California again, Michigan again, Michigan again. And then, of course, all of our friends that will be joining us on Facebook, which I can't try to figure out how to manage two screens right now. So
it can be a little technically tricky for sure.
Yeah. And I'm just like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I know we always like to say hi to our friends on Facebook. So, because you never know who's out there. Could be lots of people. It's great to see everybody. Whew, this is nice. So here in Michigan, we're under a freeze warning tonight. I had to turn the furnace on to get a little heat in the house. Wasn't planning on that, but okay. You know, you do what you got to do. Football, Big Ten football starts pretty soon, so we're excited about that, even though we can't go to the games. So we talk about a lot of different things, Sarah. So don't, we'll hear about SEC or Big Ten. Pennsylvania's with us now. Philly. Oh, Patricia in California, it's in the hundreds there. Sorry, Patricia. Well, I don't, let me just say that I had to turn my heat on. So that's what I tell you. Tony's here. What's a freeze warning? 32 degrees Celsius. They're melting in California. Australia is warm. Yeah, sorry. I'd say we'd want to send it to you, but it's only supposed to be tonight, so we don't want to get it to you that early. So we'll keep it. We don't mind it until the white stuff starts flying. And even then, I don't really care. We can do that. So, all right. So I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome again. This is Sue Peterson from the Michigan District of Kiwanis. We're happy to have you with us for tonight's Kiwanis Let's Talk, and very honored to have with us Sarah Moreland Byrne. So Sarah works for Kiwanis International, and let me find a little bit of a bio here for her so I can tell you a little bit about her. So she is Kiwanis International's digital media specialist. In addition to social media, she also manages Kiwanis's email communications and convention apps. Oh, that's good to know. She graduated from Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, with a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Japanese. She first joined Kiwanis in 2010 as a global communications intern, then as a communications specialist, serving as managing editor for Key Club and CKI magazines. She has served as Kiwanis's digital media specialist since 2014. And a few fun facts: she's an alum of Key Club and CKI, both in Indiana District. In her spare time, she does Pilates, cooks, and caters to the attention of her cat, Cocoa Puff. So Sarah's going to be with us tonight. Unfortunately, Chris had something come up, so he's not going to be able to join us this evening, but I know that Sarah can take care of us tonight and cover for Chris. So people love your name, Cocoa Puff. So hi to Cocoa Puff.
I'll let her know. She's a fan favorite for sure.
Exactly. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you. If anybody has questions tonight, if you would just put them in the chat or the question and answer period, and we will take them at the end. So Sarah, welcome to Michigan, and you're on.
Sounds great. Thank you, Sue. So good evening or good morning or afternoon, wherever you are at in the world. I know we have a global audience tonight, so that's fantastic. I will go ahead here and share my screen. All right, let's see if that, sorry, we have a couple settings here. Let's see if this works. Perfect. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started tonight. Hopefully all of you are ready to talk about everything related to social media. It's something that I have truly a passion about because there's a lot of great value in social media. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can use social media, not only for your club and district purpose, but there are also some takeaways you can add to your personal life and in some cases, business and networking as well. All right, so Sue did a fabulous job with introductions. I did want to give a shout out to Chris, even though he last minute wasn't able to be with us tonight. Chris is our communications analyst. And so while I work primarily with Kiwanis International social media, Chris works with our service leadership programs, especially Key Club and CKI. So he has done a fabulous job since joining our team pretty recently. And so we'll share some of the cool examples that he has used for Key Club and Circle K as we go through the presentation today. All right, so, ready to get social. There are so many different social media platforms out there. There are countless ones, some more famous than others. And so today we're going to focus primarily on what we consider the big three. So the big three include Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Some of these will work well for LinkedIn and some other platforms that you may be using, but we'll focus primarily on those three today. So what's on our agenda? First, we'll talk a little bit about the value that social media can bring to you personally, as well as within the Kiwanis world. We'll debunk some myths about social media that I hear a lot. We'll talk a little bit about choosing the best platforms for your club or your district, some best practices, some examples of what we have used for the Kiwanis family. We'll talk a little bit about some free or inexpensive resources that can help make social media easier for you and your club. And then also we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers, as Sue mentioned earlier. So first, talking about the value of social media. It's often free, and for the most part it is. So it's an easy, inexpensive way of communicating with others. It's also a quick way to communicate. If you just think about how fast you can post something and then get feedback from other people. It's also used by, millions of people, or billions in the cases of Facebook and Instagram worldwide. And it's a great way to also get some feedback and understand what people like, whether that is, what your current members like, what could appeal to potential members, and also what people at large in your community are interested in. So then that can help you understand what your community needs and wants, and that can help with your presence as well. So let's go ahead and debunk some myths here. These are some things that I have heard giving presentations for the past few years. And I think there are some misconceptions regarding social media. The first one is that social media is new. I hear this a lot, but if we're gonna look at the launch dates for some of these more famous social media platforms. If you're looking at Facebook in particular, you know, in the United States, if Facebook were a person, they would be a teenager who would be able to drive and get a driver's license. Twitter followed soon after, and even Snapchat, which we consider one of the newer social media platforms that has risen to the top. This year, they turned 8 years old. So, you know, social media has been around for a while and it evolves and changes with time, but for the moment, they've established this and they should be around for quite a while longer, I would assume. Social media is only for kids. I do hear this a lot too. Hopefully, this is something that everyone on this webinar understands that, you know, it is for all ages. And so to give you some stats to back that up, these are percentages from a Pew Research study. These are specifically about United States social media users. But when you break down adults into these different categories, there's not really that much variance between the social media use of someone who's 18 versus someone who is 64. So what we're seeing, especially now during the pandemic, more and more people of all different backgrounds, regions, ages are joining social media and using it more often. And I also hear that young adults no longer use Facebook. And while it is true that the numbers are decreasing gradually every year, we're still seeing high numbers who at least have a Facebook account and who are checking it on a somewhat regular basis. So, you know, again, if you look between the 18 and 24 and then 30 to 49, there is really not much of a margin of difference there. So this is something to kind of debunk that myth. And this is why we all use social media, regardless of age, regardless of background. It's got so much potential value for us to help spread the word about our Kiwanis clubs and what we do. A few other fun facts. 74% of Americans check Facebook at least once every day. Some of us, myself included, check that many, many more times than once every day. And the typical American uses at least 3 social media platforms. So if you think about that, beyond just the ones I had on that screen a few slides ago, there are so many out there. Some consider YouTube to be a social media platform, LinkedIn, Snapchat. There's so many different areas where you can find a piece that works for you. And like I mentioned earlier, with the pandemic, one of the things that we're seeing is so many people are using social media at this exponential rate. When you think about the fact that Facebook, for example, the large majority of people who have been surveyed within the last year about their social media habits, they answered that Facebook is primarily used for them to keep in touch with friends and family. So just think about the pandemic. If you're not able to go visit your family or see friends, this is one way to stay connected. And Facebook was seeing that. So this is a screenshot of an article from the New York Times towards the beginning of the pandemic. And you know, Facebook was struggling to keep up with the demand because so many people were using it. And it's not just Facebook. In this article from TechCrunch around that same time, end of March, we were seeing not just Facebook, but also Instagram and some other social media platforms where we're seeing significant increases in usage. So this is an interesting time, but it's also a fantastic time for social media because since so many more people are on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, then it also means that there are more opportunities for us to share what our Kiwanis clubs do. So let's move forward to talking about the platforms in particular, and what would work best for your club or your district, and how you make that decision. Because there is no one right answer to this question. I've been asked it many, many times, but it depends on a lot of different factors. So the first is looking at your current audience. You want to make sure that you can still communicate with those who have already become part of your club and been invested, right? You don't want to eliminate that communications channel. At the same time, you want to think about people who could be potential members or people in the community. Who do you want to be able to connect with and grow your club with? That's something to think about too. These next two bullet points go hand in hand. What your strengths are, maybe personally or as a club, and then what the platform is best known for. So for those of you who are familiar with Instagram, it is a very photo heavy platform. It prioritizes photo over text and over links. So if you have someone in your club who's a fantastic photographer and they take photos of your club projects, that may be a really good platform for you to use, because then you can take your club's strengths and apply them to that platform. And then also take a look at what your club can handle. One of the things that I always talk about is, quality over quantity. It's better to use one platform and do it well instead of stretching yourself thin over multiple platforms and only updating those every so often, so you don't really build a great audience and people aren't expecting you to continue posting. So like I said, go for quality over quantity. And I recommend focusing on the big three. So like I said, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we'll talk a little more in a few slides about those individual platforms. But the reason why we recommend those is because they're already so established. There's already millions of people who are using it. So it's easier to get the audience that you're trying to reach. There's a better likelihood that they're already using those platforms. And in the same vein, we talk about avoiding shiny new object syndrome, as I call it. At least a couple of years ago, a lot of people were trying to start their own social media platforms. And there were so many that were out there, and they'd get popular for maybe a week or two. And then after a month, they would drop off the radar and no one would be using them. And this is why we go with the established big three social media platforms, because there's no point in putting a lot of work into a new platform if it's going to be obsolete really quickly. It hasn't proven itself to stand the test of time. So focus on the ones that are more established, and let's avoid getting really excited about a new platform before it's proven itself. So, when we're talking about platforms for your club or your district, I always suggest starting with Facebook. Of all the social media platforms, it has the highest potential reach, since there are billions of people who use it all across the world. And Facebook also gives us a lot of really simple tools that can make running our club and managing public relations for our club a lot easier. So for example, we'll talk a little bit about a Facebook page. A Facebook page is what we use for a business or an organization. So you'll see there on the right side of the screen a screenshot of Kiwanis International's Facebook page. If you've been using Facebook for a while, you probably know that just a few months ago, it got an uplift. It looks a little different than it has in the past, but the same functionality is there. So with a Facebook page, this is more to share information that's still very one way, right? It's one-way communication. You're sharing information. You can create events and let people know about them. You can set up fundraisers. So you could set up a fundraiser, for example, for the Kiwanis Children's Fund. And this is a place where you can post videos and photos. And so for example, looking at events, this unfortunately is a screenshot from our canceled convention this past summer. But this gives you an idea of everything that you can share with people. You can give them details. People can click a button to buy tickets or reserve a spot through a Facebook event. This is a place where people can say, hey, I'm interested, and you can share sneak peeks ahead of the event. We love for our convention sharing photos of behind the scenes before people have arrived in the convention city, just to get everyone excited, because we're already excited. We know what's going to happen, but we want to share that with you. And it's also a great opportunity to publicize your next event. This is something that I think a lot of people tend to forget. We get to a point where we've promoted and we did our event, and now we're like, what do? We had a successful event. Well, this is a great way to follow up, thank everyone for attending via your Facebook event. And then you can also give them a heads up of what's coming up. Invite them to a meeting, invite them to your next project. It's a great way to gather your community and potential members. And it's really easy and it's free. Another really cool function that Facebook has, it has reviews for organizations and businesses. So if you think about this, reviews have become a really big part of people's decision making. If any of you have ever shopped on Amazon and you want to check out the reviews before you purchase something, or if you had a horrible experience at a restaurant and you leave a review on Yelp or another review-based app. These are things that have become more commonplace, and Facebook gives us that opportunity to where we can review organizations and businesses on the app. So this is where you could leave a positive review for your Kiwanis Club. And so here's another view of that reviews page. And this is where it gathers everything. So if someone goes to your club page and they're wondering if Kiwanis is a good fit for them and they really want to hear what individuals have to say, they can go to the reviews section and see if people are recommending your club. They can see, as you see there, an average rate out of 5 stars. They can see all of this. And so that gets you really good PR for your club. And a lot of it really isn't a whole lot of work on your part. All right, so we talked a little bit about Facebook pages. There are also things called Facebook groups, and they have different functions than a Facebook page. So what you see here is a screenshot of the official Kiwanis International Facebook group. This is where instead of a business sharing information and letting people comment, this gives individual members a chance to communicate. This is where you can build a community and communicate within your club. And you have these opportunities to, moderate who joins. If anyone's posting something inappropriate, you have the ability to remove those posts. It's a great place for people to share ideas with one another. But with a Facebook group, the biggest difference between that and a Facebook page is that a Facebook group feels very closed. Someone may look at that and say, you know what, I feel like I need to be part of this club, an official member, before I join this group. So a Facebook group is meant more for communications within your club. And a Facebook page is more community facing, public facing. And that's how people will find your club and learn more about you and kind of figure out if they want to join. So we've talked a little bit about Facebook. I do want to give some time to Twitter and Instagram as well. If you have a strong Facebook page and you want to expand, Twitter is a great spot. So Twitter has a character limit. So these are very short pieces of information. Sometimes there's a video, sometimes you can share images, but it's really concise. That's the biggest thing about Twitter. It's great for real-time events. If you want to follow what's going on, say at a district convention, that's where Twitter really shines. This is a great place to use hashtags like our official hashtag Kids Need Kiwanis, because you can click that hashtag and then it will show you what everyone has posted using that hashtag recently. You can also share photos from your projects here for media to pick up. Twitter is the best platform to connect with your town or city's journalists to try and get them to cover an upcoming event. So we recommend Twitter as a great PR tool to get your club noticed by your local newspapers and television media. Instagram, like I mentioned earlier, is really focused on photos. Images are very, very important. They're what's going to attract people to engage with your posts on Instagram. They're really not meant for links because you can only include one link, and that's in your bio. You cannot include a link, a clickable link in a post itself. So this is where you really want to show photos of club projects, the people that you help. And this is another great place to include hashtags. So the good news when we're talking about the anatomy of a great post is that even though each platform is a little bit different, you could write something longer on Facebook than you can on Twitter. A lot of what makes a post really good is the same across all platforms and beyond the big three. So looking at a post, here is an example of one that we posted on the Kiwanis International Facebook page. You want to include short, friendly copy that falls into one of these three categories of being a useful resource, something that's inspirational or motivational, or something that's entertaining. Many studies have shown that these three buckets of these three categories of content are things that are shared the most and liked the most. And what's great is that when you think about Kiwanis, a lot of what we do is inspirational. We've got that category on our radar all the time because what we do is so inspirational, helping kids. Having something that's a clear call to action. What do you want people to do after they read your post? Do you want them to click on a link? Do you want them to comment? Do you want them to share their personal story, their Kiwanis story? We want to make sure that they know what they need to do when they read our posts. And then really including some type of engaging visual, whether it's photos or videos, and primarily of people, because again, studies show that that's what people like seeing the most. And they get really excited, they want to share it, they want to like it or comment. So really we're looking at these three pieces when we're talking about the anatomy of a great post. So here are a couple examples to see this in action. So let's say you are posting on Facebook and you have this. So join us for our next meeting on Tuesday and saying where you're meeting and what time. So this is great information for inviting someone to a meeting. But how can we make this better? First thing we need to ask ourselves is why would someone else care? If I'm someone in the community, would that really appeal to me? Would that make me want to join a club? So instead of doing that, what are ways that you can illustrate the amazing things that your club does? Those are things that are going to influence someone to attend a meeting or a project more than just telling them. Maybe add some photos. You can also share anything that is from Kiwanis.org's news blog, or share coverage of other Kiwanis clubs in your area as well. So these are just some ideas of ways that you can use social media to not only share the good that your club does, but also attract new members. So here's another example. So if you want to talk about how you had a check presentation to a local children's hospital, which is fantastic. That's like a great story and that's very heartwarming. But how can we make this better? Like really get people emotionally attached to this. So one of the things that you could do, you could talk about how that money is helping that hospital. You can include a thank you. Let's say this $1,000 came from a club fundraiser. You can let people know, hey, as part of our community, for those of you who attended our fundraiser and participated in it, this money that we were able to present today is because of you. And that makes people feel really good about themselves. The other thing to keep in mind, we have lots of check photos. We see this all the time. And while these are great photos and there's no reason not to share these, I did a Google search just of Kiwanis and checks. And this is what popped up. So what do these photos say? Is someone going to see these on your social media platform and say, you know what? They give out money and checks to kids. I want to be part of that. Or would something that shows actually helping a kid and how it helps that child appeal more? So going back and talking a little bit about copy, we talked a little bit about how it should have a call to action and how it should be short and conversational. But here are some additional best practices. First, we want to use words that evoke good feelings. So when we think about our word choice and how important it is, here is just one example. So if we posted something that said, get funding for your next project. Now, the sentiment is good, but funding is one of those words that's very businessy. It doesn't really have a whole lot of emotional attachment, right? So if we change that word funding to money, does that change? How do you change in the way that you react to that word? Now let's take it a step further and we say $5,000. Now usually as we go through these, once you hit that very specific amount, that's going to be something that sparks more imagination and excitement in someone's mind than something like funding. We'll also want to make sure that we avoid acronyms. We are an organization that has a lot of acronyms, and especially for those of us who have been part of the organization for so long, you know, we understand these acronyms really easily. But this is something where if we include those in our social media posts, someone in the community who's not affiliated with Kiwanis may have no idea what we're talking about and will have lost their attention. So we want to make sure that we avoid those. And we also want to focus on what's in it for the audience. One of the biggest mistakes that an organization can make is assuming that you know what your audience is interested in and what they want. And this is across the world, you know, this is something that happens all the time. But think about it. If you were someone who was interested in volunteering and wanted to learn more, what would you need to convince you to join Kiwanis? Now for images. People, like I mentioned before, especially happy faces. People respond to seeing other people. Action shots, you know, if you are doing a park cleanup project, you can get photos of everyone cleaning up. Whenever possible, try and get photos of people from the front, so then we're not seeing people's backs. Again, so then we can see those faces. Whenever possible, if we can focus on showing the people who have been helped, you know, it's not something we can always do. For example, if you're doing a project at a kid's hospital, you're not going to be able to get some photos there due to privacy reasons. But whenever possible, if you can somehow show the community and how it's been helped visually, that's going to be great for your post. I want to debunk another myth that, it has to be a professional photo. And it does not have to be. If you have someone who's a very good photographer, that's great. But if you have members who are taking photos during a project, just using their phones, that's totally fine too. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then always make sure that you are checking to see if other people have taken photos at an event, so then you can share a lot of different photos at once. They may have captured a moment that you didn't. And so then you can get a well-rounded view of your project. And it also helps members, especially those who maybe are new members, feel like they've contributed and they are part of your club. So some ideas, if you're looking for things to post about on social media, question prompts. So you can ask them, what's your favorite Kiwanis memory? You can do polls and ask people, which do you like better, pizza or hamburgers? They don't have to be serious, they can be fun. You can do trivia contests. You can share facts about volunteering. There are several studies out there that talk about how volunteering can help you live longer. Those are great things to share and get people pumped up and excited about joining Kiwanis. You can share updates on your Kiwanis service leadership programs, share the great things that your Key Club or Builders Club have been doing. And then you can also link to any news you're sharing on your website. So those are just some ideas to get you started. So why are all these things important? And it all boils down to the number 3. So, if you remember nothing else from this presentation, remember the number 3. And there's a couple reasons for this. First, 3 seconds. That is how long our attention span is when we're scrolling, especially if we're on mobile. So, if you have your phone and you are scrolling, usually 3 seconds is about the time it takes for your thumb to get from the bottom of your screen to the top. So we have 3 seconds to get people's attention and cause them to stop that mindless scrolling that we all do. And then 3 posts, the other reason why number 3 is important. So 3 posts is about how much context someone needs if they're coming to your page and trying to figure out if you are a good fit for them. So, that's not much at all. So when we're looking at this in context, here is a screenshot of Kiwanis's Instagram account. People are really looking just at these pieces before making a decision. So they're looking at your logo, they're looking at your short bio, and they're looking at your 3 most recent posts. So at any point in time, you should be able to go to your page, look at these pieces. For Facebook, for example, you'll still have your logo. You will have an about section instead of a bio, and then look at your 3 most recent posts and say, what would someone understand about my club if this were all that they saw? Are you sharing, would they know you help kids? Do they know you're a volunteer organization? What cues are they getting just from looking at that small bit of information? So I know Chris isn't able to be with us tonight, but I did want to go ahead and share some of the Key Club and CKI examples from social media that they've done so far this year. Chris has done a fantastic job of this idea of really balancing the fun and the professional. Especially when we're talking about our high school and college students, a lot of them are in for the leadership and the service, and that can be very serious. But they're also in it for the fellowship. So how do we illustrate that on social media? So a couple examples here, we show gratitude. So when we had our students graduating from high school earlier this spring, we did a shout out to all of the graduates. This year is a very, very different year for our high school graduates. A lot of them missed out on those special ceremonies. And so this was a way of us recognizing and acknowledging the hard work they'd done, not only in school, but also in Key Club, so that they could feel that special feeling that they should have gotten had they been able to have a normal graduation ceremony. We've also used social media as an opportunity to share what other clubs have done, and that's a way of showing gratitude as well. So this is a project where these Key Clubbers used balloons and stood outside their school and spelled out Key Club, which is really, really cool idea. We want to focus on who we're helping rather than ourselves. It's very easy to talk about ourselves, right? But we really want to focus on those who are benefiting from what we're doing. So this is an example. Key Club has partnered with Thirst Project for a number of years now. Thirst Project helps bring clean water to a lot of communities around the world. So again, sharing photos of those people and communities, maybe, thousands and thousands of miles away from you, who have been helped. And then also sharing some of the stories of Key Clubbers who have done really cool things in their communities. Can also ask an open-ended question. This is one of ours from New Year on January 1st. And another Thirst Project example here. But asking an open-ended question, having some type of prompt to get people to comment and start a conversation. So I also want to share some Kiwanis examples as well. Here we have an example of connecting directly with your audience, wanting to make sure that we're saying you and we, and building that sense of community in the words that we use. Talking again about our club's impact, like we talked about earlier, and being transparent, especially if the community has helped you get this project done, making sure that they feel like they're thanked and they can join in on the excitement of it being completed. Another one is getting people thinking about and sharing their experiences. This is an example from something we'd started earlier this year and late last year about, if you had a bumper sticker on your car, what would it say? And people were giving us some really cool creative ideas. This is where you can ask people, what were your favorite Kiwanis service projects that we've done? What's something that you'd like to see us do in the future? You can brainstorm really cool ideas and allow people to be creative. Another thing you can do is get people excited by sharing a teaser. So some of you may be familiar with Zozobra. This is one of the biggest Kiwanis events in the world. And so it just happened just about a little over a month ago. And so we were sharing some of this content on Instagram. So this is part of our Instagram story. And so we posed some questions. What is this thing? Why is it on fire? And what's a gloom? So then people could get intrigued, and then they may want to click and learn more. So I want to talk a little bit about some of these free resources that are available to you. A lot of them available on Kiwanis.org, as well as some from other websites that can make your social media content planning and scheduling a lot easier, because we all are strapped for time. We're busy. So how can we make this easier? So first, if you haven't checked out Kiwanis.org/brand, I highly encourage you to do so. There is so much content on here. Half the time, I don't even remember how much is on this page. We have ready-made social media posts, including photos. We have videos. There's a photo library, so you can go and pull photos that you can use for your flyers or newsletters or websites, brochures and invitations, event flyers. There's so much stuff on Kiwanis.org/brand. We also have, with those social media images, what we call our do-gooder squares. Some of you may have seen us using these over the past year or so. We create a few each month and share them on social media. And you may also see these in Kiwanis International Update, which is sent on the first Tuesday of the month to all Kiwanians. These are just cute little illustrations of kids, and they apply to a lot of different situations. You know, if you're looking at this, the little kid in the green square on the bottom left is for a pancake breakfast. You know, if you want to promote your pancake breakfast, you can do that. You know, thanks for being a helper there in the center is something you can share with your club members just to let them know that they are being thought of and they are appreciated. In addition to those, we also have these Kiwanis social media squares. They're very inspirational. They tie back to our purpose, which is serving the children of the world. And they're just something fun. So if you're kind of in a social media rut, or you know, your club hasn't been able to meet for a little while and you want to have something to share to continue to connect people to why we do what we do, these are great options for that. We also have our Kids Need Kiwanis videos. There are more than a dozen of these available at kiwanis.org/brand. And so they have so many different topics and everything. So you can feel free to download those from our Vimeo page, and then you can use those on social media and on your website. We also have the ability to provide you custom Kiwanis logos completely for free. So here are just some examples. You go to kiwanis.org/brand and click on the custom logo button, submit a request. It does take a few weeks on average to get those back, but we will have those completely done for you in different sizes and formats so you can use them on all sorts of materials. And then if you or a club that you know of is getting ready to celebrate a milestone anniversary, so we're looking at 25th, 50th, 75th, or 100th anniversary, you can also request a club anniversary logo, and that goes through a similar process. And again, that is also free, where a professional designer will design that for you and provide it to you. And speaking of club anniversaries, if you are reaching one of those milestones, we do have a lot of other resources, you know, press releases, ideas on how to celebrate, more social media examples that you can use for your club. And I do want to point out too, kiwanis.org/news. When we share content, whether it's on kiwanis.org or if it's on social media or in an email, those are free for you to use and repurpose in any of your newsletters, your social media. You don't have to worry about plagiarism or anything like that. We provide this content so that you can then share it in you know, whatever format makes sense for you and your club. So a couple tools here that are not related to Kiwanis necessarily, but things that are free and or inexpensive. We have Canva. Canva, a lot of our Key Club and CKI members use this. It's like a free version of Photoshop or InDesign where you can create social media squares, you can create flyers, you can create email headers, you can create lots of different things here. And like I said, it's completely free to use. We also have TweetDeck. This is a way that you can organize multiple Twitter feeds. If you have maybe a personal Twitter feed as well as a club one and you're trying to balance both, it can help keep you organized. If you're looking for an easy way to send emails to all of your members at once, you can use a service like MailChimp. That's just one example. There are so many different ones out there. But if you wanted to make something that looks kind of professional, but also doesn't cost a whole lot of money, if any at all, that's a really good tool if you're sending to a small group of people. Some additional tools here. Wanted to mention Hootsuite and Buffer. So when we talk about social media scheduling tools, one of the greatest things about these tools is that, as someone who's posting on social media, you don't need to be there right at the moment that you want to press send and post something. You can set something up. Let's say you need to post something on Saturday, but you know that you're going to be out of town and you're not going to be able to post something from your phone. You can schedule it ahead of time and then it will post and you don't have to do anything else. So those are both great tools for that, to help you plan and not be sitting at your computer trying to post something. And it also lets you see analytics, so you can see what people like, what people didn't like, and gauge from that what other things you may want to share on social media. We also have Google Apps in here, so more than just Gmail for those of you who use Gmail, but it's a way that you can organize your social media posts and your content in folders with other members of your club so you can all collaborate. And then finally, we have Linktree, which is one way to link to a lot of different pieces. For example, on Instagram, we talked about how you have one link and it's in your bio. But if you want to link to a lot of different things, you can use Linktree, create that one link, and then it will link to a lot of other pages for you. So then you can bypass that limitation that Instagram gives us. All right, so I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I know Sue will help me see all of the questions that you guys have and try and answer as many of those as we can.
Well, thank you, Sarah. The questions are pouring in, so we'll get to what we can get tonight, and then if whatever's left, we'll go back there. First one, why should clubs use LinkedIn? I thought that app was for people searching for jobs or change of career.
That is a fantastic question. So the nice thing about LinkedIn is that it's coming from that professional angle, like you mentioned in the question. So a lot of times what we'll see when we share things as Kiwanis International is that, we share something on Kiwanis leadership tips. Well, that's not just something that Kiwanians can use just in their clubs. Those are often leadership tips that you can use in your everyday professional life. So then what we notice are members who follow our page, see those pieces, and then share them on their channels. And it then brings more awareness to Kiwanis, because some people in their network may not be aware of who we are and what we do. It's also a great place where a lot of times we see club officers. We just had the start of the new Kiwanis year, right? We have people who share their stories of becoming the next round of leaders for their club. And that gives an opportunity to really connect the amazing networking potential that LinkedIn has with your club. So it's a good networking tool because a lot of things on LinkedIn are really focused on, a lot of times, a local network, people who all live in the same place, who are working at the same location. So this is where you're going to get a lot of good attention and hype for your club and what your club does. And it's also great because usually people would then contact you because they are familiar with you. They trust you and your opinion on whether a club is good or not, rather than someone just advertising to them. They already know someone, so they can come to you and ask you, hey, you talk a lot about that Kiwanis club that you're part of, and I went and looked at the page and it looks really cool. I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about that. So they've already got a built-in face that they can ask those questions to. So I would recommend using LinkedIn, even if your club doesn't use LinkedIn to at least use it professionally for yourself and for other club members, because again, it still brings a lot of that hype to your network personally.
And I think LinkedIn is also adds to the component of networking for careers. You know, if you are looking for a job in a particular city or a particular job in a different field, you know, there's a way that you can search that, and you may be able to find a Kiwanian in an area that has that. And even if it's just to call and say, hey, tell me about this job. You know, I'm looking at being a physical therapist, or, you know, whatever, how can I learn more? There's a great, and having a connection by calling a Kiwanis member and saying, hey, I'm a Kiwanian or a Key Clubber, you know, there's kind of like an instant connection there that they, you know, would be more willing to sit and talk with you about it. So it's truly a great networking option. So, okay. Are there any great tips when showcasing? Okay, I'm going to start over. Are there any great tips when showcasing our service projects and events on social media?
So when showcasing, you know, your projects and your events, if we're talking about something ahead of time that you want to invite people to come, you know, give them as much advance notice as possible, and don't be afraid to continue to remind people about them. Now, obviously, you maybe don't want to remind people every single day, but you know, if you have something that's coming up in a month, every week, post a reminder saying, hey guys, we want to make sure that you have this on your calendars. Don't forget about this. Here's how you can sign up, or here's how you can participate. And like I said, making sure that you have a plan for follow-up. So then after an event happens and you have these people in your community who were really excited about your event and attended it, whether it's virtual or in person, you know, when we get back to in-person events again, you know, making sure that you use that momentum and their excitement before it fades away and connect them to something that's coming up. In terms of sharing events afterwards, like if you want to share with the media, make sure that you include images that are as exciting and engaging as possible. See if you can share a story, even if it's somewhat anonymous. You know, if you have this great story of helping a kid and there's a good quote that you're able to share anonymously about the kid, talking about how much this means to them, that's fantastic, because again, that gets people really engaged with the emotional connection of Kiwanis, and that's what's going to get them to want to be involved.
Great, thanks. Where do our web pages fit in with social media? Are web pages dated in our context?
Web pages are definitely not dated. We are seeing overall a trend of more people going to social media when they have questions about a brand or an organization. That said, there are still a large majority of people who will search for a website first. So that's where it helps to have a presence on at least one social media platform and one website. And this is great too, because you can link to your website from your social media and vice versa, so they work together. But you know, different things show up differently in searches. Like if you're using a search engine, you know, I would also suggest having a website, because not everyone is going to use the platform that you have. You know, a lot of people use Facebook, but we also hear that there are a lot of Kiwanians who are not using Facebook. So you don't want to lose out on potential members simply because they don't use that platform. So I would recommend having both a social media platform and a website, and have them work in tandem.
Okay, how often should you share? I don't want to share too often and drive away current members or potential new members.
That is a fantastic question. So the answer to this is kind of fluid. You know, a lot of it depends on how big your audience is and where your audience is. If you are working with just one area, so let's say you are a city-based club rather than say like an e-club that spans lots of different time zones, then you can share, you know, I would say no more than once per day. If you want to share 2 or 3 times a week, you know, that's really up to you and what your club can handle. One thing I would suggest though is making sure that whatever schedule makes the most sense for you to be consistent. So we want to make sure that people understand that you are a current club, you're still doing things, even if you're not meeting in person. Maybe you're sharing a cool Kiwanis story, something where when they look at that, they don't, like, you know, let's say they come to your Facebook page and they see, oh, they haven't posted in 3 months. They may think that you're not still active. So we want to make sure that when we're posting with some type of regularity so people are expecting. So then also people who are following your account then expect, hey, I should go back and check this page and see if there's anything new here, because they're, you know, we've taught them to expect that, hey, every Monday we're going to post a motivational quote, for example. So really, I would say aim for, if you can, 2 to 3 posts per week. And like I said, they don't always have to be about your projects. They can be things about Kiwanis in general. They can be updates about your SLPs. They can be just fun questions to get people talking about their favorite Kiwanis memories. So that also helps with your frequency too, if there are different types of posts that you're sharing, so that it's not all one category.
Okay. Is there someone who would look at our pages and offer tips or just give constructive criticism?
Well, you can feel free to send emails my way, and I can get to them as soon as I can, but we'd be happy to. I do not work alone. We have a great social media team in addition to me and Chris. And so we have several people who could take a look and give you some feedback.
That's great. That's a wonderful resource. Do you caption every photo if there are, say, 20 photos that you post from a meeting or an event?
I would say if you have captions for all of them and you feel like doing so, go for it. But if you just want to caption the post itself, you could do that as well. That's really up to you. The biggest thing is that you want to make sure that if someone from your community is looking at it, they understand what's going on in the photos. So that's really up to you. You may want to just tag members in each of the photos. Sometimes they'll comment and give more context to something. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about putting captions on all of those, especially if they're going to be very similar, like Bob hands out donations. Next photo, Bob still hands out donations, you know.
Okay, this is a good one. And this is kind of with our youth protection. With so many projects involving children and privacy rules about showing children, how do we get around that to show action shots?
That is a fantastic question. And that's something that we have been doing training even within staff about, especially over the last few years. So there is a resource. It is at kiwanis.org/brand, but it is also available at kiwanis.org/photo release. And so we do have a standard photo release form that you can share at an event ahead of time. So let's say you're taking photos at a school. You can check with the school and see what students' parents have already signed. You can also provide them with that form, and then they can fill that out. And then you'll have an idea of who within that class has been approved to be part of photos. If it's more of a gray area if people are at a big event, like say a festival. If you're putting on a festival and it's a public place, at that point, if you are sharing an image just to document what you did, like it's a recap the next week saying, hey, we had a great festival this past weekend, here's some photos, you know, that's going to be much more acceptable than taking a photo you took of a kid and using it in an ad for your club where you're trying to recruit members. So there's a distinct difference when we're talking about photo usage, whether it's something that's just sharing an event that was open to the public in a public space, and something that is used really in like a marketing way and as an advertisement. So I would suggest going to Kiwanis.org/photo release and checking that out. So that makes it, that covers your club in a lot of situations.
I know some projects that I've done, sometimes like if you go into a school system, the teacher will tell you, don't, you know, this person won't be in the room when you take pictures. You know, they'll let you know who can or can't be in pictures a lot of times, whether it's for privacy reasons or whether the student just doesn't want to be there. So I have found in most places, if you just say, hey, we want to take some pictures, is there anybody we shouldn't take a picture of? Because they have photo releases as well, and then carry some of the photo releases around with you from Kiwanis International. And I always follow up to go back later if you wanted to use it for a brochure or something, would be to go back to that Kiwanis or those parents and say, hey, we'd like to use your son or daughter's photo in our brochure. Can we have your permission to do so? So it's that the more follow-up you do, the better. Okay, is it necessary to get our social media accounts verified?
Is it necessary? No. But if you're able to get it verified, that then helps you kind of differentiate your club from anything that's similarly named that's different. So with individual clubs, you may, I think in most cases you wouldn't have to do this because there's probably not going to be someone else with a confusingly similar name. But when we're talking about getting your accounts verified, a lot of times that's to make sure that if there are several accounts, especially copycat or fake accounts that are trying to impersonate that other account. So this happens a lot with celebrities, right? Someone will pretend to be a celebrity and then it could be confusing trying to figure out which one's the real account. For Kiwanis, we try to verify all of our accounts so then people recognize that this is the official account as compared to someone who may have created an account for their club but just named it Kiwanis Club, because that can be a little confusing if someone looks at that and says, I want to talk to Kiwanis International, and they go to that Kiwanis Club, which is really representing just one club rather than the entire organization. So if you feel like you want to do that, verification involves some form filling out and some additional steps. So really for an individual club, there's not too much value in that, but if you want to, feel free.
So we had a question that came in. What does it mean to get your account verified, and how would you do that?
Perfect.
So go ahead.
So that's a good follow-up or prequel question. So when you look at accounts, so you'll see this on Instagram, you'll see this on Facebook, you'll see it some on Twitter as well. There will be a little icon next to the name of that account. A lot of times it's a little check mark. And what that means is you've gone through the paperwork to verify that you are who you say you are. So it then differentiates your account from someone who's trying to impersonate you, or someone who's a copycat, or someone who has a very similar name, but maybe isn't the same level as your organization. So there is a verification process for each platform. For a while now, Twitter has paused verifications. So they probably aren't doing those at the moment, but Facebook and Instagram do. So there are, if you go to the help section of those individual platforms and just look up verification, it'll take you to a page that will give you a step-by-step guide, because that's going to be different depending on which platform you're on.
Great. And Sam said that last week was Youth Protection Week, and there was mention that even if there's permission from the students and their parents, we need to get permission for Kiwanis pictures. So basically we were on target there. And the final question that I have that's in there is, can we get a PDF of your presentation?
Of course, I will make sure that Sue has that. Sue, are you good with helping distribute it?
Yep.
Perfect. Yes, we'll definitely make sure you get a copy of this.
So we will make sure that we make it available. You can either put the request in on the Kiwanis of Michigan Facebook page, or my personal Facebook page, or based on the people that are on here tonight. I know many of you have my email address, suepeterson@gmail.com. So you can do that, and we'll be happy to share that from Sarah. So that you had lots of questions tonight. Good job. Good job. We covered some great information. We got some great feedback. We'll give one last second here if there's anybody has any last minute questions. We are a little over tonight, but that's okay. This is great information. What was the email address? I will type it in the chat. How's that? It's Sue Peterson. It's my name. SuePeterson @gmail.com. So I put it in the chat there, and we'll leave that chat up for a little bit so people can see it. Or like I said, you can reach us on the Kiwanis of Michigan Facebook page. Or I would bet if you ask a couple people in your district and they ask for my name, they would be able to give it to you. So great presentation tonight. Thank you very much, Sarah. We appreciate that. You can let your colleague know that, you're good. You can fly alone now.
I'll give them a little ribbing tomorrow.
A little ribbing and say that, I was pretty good tonight, or we'll make him come do his own. How's that? So
I think we'll do that.
We'll do that. Okay. So next week, Nick Coolidge from Kiwanis International will be here to talk about digital learning material that Kiwanis International has developed with our service leadership program. So he'll be with us next Thursday. The October 29th, Conquering Pandemic Anxiety Through Gratitude. So Conquering Pandemic Anxiety Through Gratitude. We have a few other, like I said, we're booked through the end of, till right before the Thanksgiving holiday here in the States. And then we're actually going to take a break for the month of December. And we'll come back in January with some programs, some pretty good programs that I think we've got lined up. If you have any suggestions for speakers that you would like to see on here, I was telling somebody, they're like, how do you do this? I said, well, that's how I get paid, is by how many speakers I get. And they said, what? I said, no, I don't get paid. It's a joke. But any speaker we can get, we'd love to have you with us. And we appreciate, the continued support of the program. It does get shared, and we appreciate that. And thankful for people like Sarah and Kiwanis International who have joined us on these evenings to share their skills and their knowledge, as we say, with Kiwanis around the world. So with that, we will say good evening. Have a great weekend. For those of you that are in 100-degree weather, send just a couple degrees our way for those of us that are in the 30s, but we don't want much, so don't send too much. But with that, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.